Hello everyone, welcome to Middle Fantasy. I am your host Zach. Today I have a very special review for you all today. Today I'm going to be talking about a debut piece of work which is really exciting. Today I'm going to be talking all about Breach of Peace by YouTuber Daniel Greene, and this is his debut novelette. This is really cool. Now, this is also going to be a unique review. It was not on my radar. I didn't know anything about it, or even when I was supposed to even get the book, because for me, this is going to be really weird. The reason why is I actually don't watch any of his work. He has done so much for the fantasy community, both with BookTube and pretty much him in a very positive way, especially on Twitter. The reason I don't watch his work is that I try to avoid as much fantasy-related BookTube channels as possible, because I have this weird policy of not watching similar content to the stuff that I make unless I personally know them. For me, it's just one of those things where it's easier to avoid it, so I kind of don't mess up my own collective when it comes to creative processes. So I don't really watch Daniel Greene's work. I might have watched it in my lifetime about 15 minutes at most, so it's easy for me to miss the book entirely. The reason I decided to give this book a try actually is someone that I know personally asked me to read it, and they thought I would love it, so they bought it for me, so I decided to give it a try. And who says no to a free book? I know I don't. This is also very much a self-published book. Now, I read a whole bunch of self-published books. I have covered a few on this channel before. A lot of them are amazing. They are often kind of a mixed bag too at the same time. Sometimes they're excellent, while other ones are just, oh my god, painful to read. So this was certainly an adventure. Going into it is going to be a lot of fun. So today we're going to be talking all about Breach of Peace. Well, why don't we get into the review? So, Breach of Peace is a novelette. The plot is very straightforward. We follow a group of inspectors who are uncovering the mystery of a family that has been horribly butchered. And I mean horribly butchered. Our main character is Clid, who takes it upon herself to go down this rabbit hole as she discovers the deeper plots of the murder and possibly a conspiracy that goes all the way to the tippity top. Overall, I'm actually super surprised with this novelette. I think Daniel Greene actually is in the wrong genre. This is just me. He should be writing mysteries rather than fantasy, because this mystery is super strong. It was a fun cat and mouse chase with clues and mysteries to the very last page. This novelette is, if you took the show Ripper Street, Torchwood, and NCIS, and you smushed them all together, it is a high fantasy police procedural. This is so different of all the settings that I can think of that it really sucked me in right away, because I'm so used to people with wizards, witches, warriors, and dragons. Honestly, the biggest thing that I really loved about this book is that there is so little shoe leather. Clid and all the other investigators just don't stand around and pick their nose. The plot is very much consistently moving and jumps from fantasy to mystery to thriller so very easily. The prose are snappy. Also, we never have a moment where the plot just stops and everything just flatlines to figure things out. It never happens in that way. I never felt that the plot was slowing down really. Like the author could not figure out in the middle of the book really what to do. I actually finished this in one sitting because I didn't have, any place that I felt like it would have a good stopping point, and it needed to have a break. For me, I read this in one sitting. I thought all the characters were super interesting. I don't have any problems with any of them. I actually felt like all of them were believable. Each one kind of deserved the position that they were in as pretty much an inspector. They were all in the narrative very well and integrated. I really loved Clid. She was a breath of fresh air. She doesn't fall into the BAF for being the sake of being a BAF. She has her high points, she has her low points. We spent most of the book with her, and I actually got really invested in her well-being. The best thing that I have to say Daniel Greene did is when it comes to the narrative, she's already married, and we behead the plotline of the will they, won't they when it comes to the inspectors. And I have to say, in this genre, it makes all the difference. I loved all the supporting cast of Chapman and her husband Samuel. They all bounce off each other and they're all great perfect foils, including Rollins. I loved Rollins so much. It was nice to have a character to think for themselves and get out of situations. I think with that being said, I think we should also talk about the cons of the book. I do have a few of them when it comes to the cons. No book's perfect. I think one of the weakest things was the mystery. That's weird to say that Daniel Greene is in the wrong genre, and then I say that the mystery is the weakest part. I felt that the mystery was truncated, and pretty much I think the author stripped down all the fat of the steak to make sure that the story was 140 pages. The plot was moving so fast that the only way I could personally keep up was just letting the character explain it to you as plain as possible. It wasn't a bad thing, but I also felt like it was annoying at parts because you always had the moments where basically, aha, this is a clue. Is it? Or is this a clue? No. What about this character? Why is his shirt ripped in this way? It's like you don't have enough time. You have to keep moving, keep moving, keep moving with that shoe leather. I think my biggest problem with the story is actually kind of a few sentences. I liked how it was written, dialogue, description, action. Daniel obviously has read so many books and he understands what makes an action scene, a dialogue scene, a description scene. My only concern is that he might need to work on tension. I don't go much into detail to avoid spoilers, but a few times in the story, the narrative goes into the trope of, little did they know this would be the last time that they kissed. Those few sentences actually deflated so much of the tension of the book because it was not misdirect or a red herring. So as the reader already, I knew that something was going to go down. I knew as much as when it comes to being a reader that a few characters might not be long for this world. So after reading those sentences, they happen a few times in the book. It actually was always in the back of my head that things were going to end up very bad. If they were out of there, pretty much those sentences, the narrative and the teasers and the tense nature of the twist would have been more effective in the end. The only other thing that I noticed I had a concern about is when it comes to the world building, the core concepts such as how the police work, how the military work, that's all there and is really well fleshed out. And I was really getting sucked into the world, but also at the exact same time, elements of the world building you're thrown into pretty much in media res. I see that there's a much grander world, such as more than the city, but also at the same time, I felt that they would name drop a few things and we'd learn about them later on, but you never really did. Again, this book's 140 pages, and by the end of it, I had so many questions, but I feel like when it comes to the world building, it isn't really, because in the world that we're in, you can actually see that, okay, these characters wouldn't be like the insert of the reader, the more of the people that already know about the status quo. You don't have to fill them in. And this is more of a tease of what's happening when it comes to the story. At times, it does work, but again, I think because we're working with 140 pages, if you're looking for a grand adventure like a Wheel of Time book or, A Song of Ice and Fire, you're not going to get super in-depth world building here, but it's more of the jumping on point, which I really do like, but also at the exact same time, a lot of it is surface level, but I feel like in later books or the next book, it's going to be filled out. So it's not really a concern, but it's something that I notice, especially when it comes to the world building of this world. The last thing that I'll say that is not really a con, but not really a positive, this is a little novelette. It feels like the main prologue to a story proper. I don't hate this. It actually reminds me a lot of the Wheel of Time prologues or a George R. R. Martin prologue. They're pretty much used to set up the stakes, the tone, introduce possibly new concepts of the narrative that will be underlined through the rest of the narrative. If this isn't the tone that you're going for when it comes to the prologue, I'm interested to see when it comes to the actual narrative, when you decide to write a full book, how it's going to go. Because if this is just kind of the tone and the perspective Daniel Greene's putting in the story, oh man, this is going to be a picnic, I guess, with kids hanging from hooks, mutilated bodies, black ooze. It's pretty much Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze, but far, far more sinister. Overall, I found this novelette to be so refreshing. I am honestly surprised by it. It really goes to show that with much love and attention, Daniel Greene has, when it comes to it, has built a new fantasy genre when it comes to the fantasy police procedural, and I wanted to know more about the world and this whole universe. Something that I really think he's really good at when it comes to the world building is that. It did have a few hiccups, but for a debut, who doesn't have a few hiccups? And really, I highly recommend this book a lot, and I support someone who is crafting a series that, honestly, I believe will be on everyone's radar within the next 5 to 10 years. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, maybe consider subscribing down below or giving a thumbs up. Well, everyone, thank you all so much, and like always, may your food and drink ever be tasteful, and may your books be filled with fantasy and adventure. Bye, everyone. See ya!